What are we doing in the black community? The number one consumer of a Mercedes-Benz
It's us.
us. The number one consumer of a Gucci and a Louis Vuitton, us. And they don't even advertise. Why is it that in the black community, we are always the number one consumer, but we're not the number one creators?
So you just said it, the fact that there's consumers and creators. For so long, we assume success based on consumption.
Welcome to Closing the Gap podcast, The Truth About Black Wealth. I am your co-host, Mr. Eddie Richardson, here with our host and the owner of Hamilton Wealth Advisors, Mr. Wilbur Hamilton. How you doing today, brother?
Blessed and highly favored.
Amen, amen. So we're striving to give you a righteous and holy podcast today and talk about some great things. And you are tuned in first and foremost on WATV 94.9 on your FM dial. Also, you find us here on YouTube at Closing the Gap, the podcast, The Truth. You can also find us on your iTunes podcast, Spotify, and wherever you get your media outlet. You can also follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Closing the Gap podcast. We ask that you like, share, subscribe, listen to it. Let us know that we give you some good information.
Absolutely.
Is there something else you want to know, right? Leave some comments on there. Share it with some other people because we come here because we feel like this is the calling of God upon our lives and what he asks us to do. And we are striving to be obedient to God first and foremost by giving you knowledge and information that God has shared with us and that we have acquired in our respective careers and what God also shares with us spiritually and through our experiences of living. But then also we don't want to be stingy with it at all, right?
Absolutely.
We're sharing it. But we know that we don't know everything. But what we do know, we share. And what we want to know has it been beneficial to you so far? And are there some other things that you want to know that we can touch on? And so in today's show, we want to dive in today and talk about legacy and love, right? Love and legacy. Because we know it's important to, first of all, understand yourself and know that the things that you love the most are the things that you're going to pay the most attention to.
Absolutely.
Right. Whatever you love is going to show by how much time you spend on doing that thing or how much sharing you do in a particular thing. That displays what you love and what you care about. I'm reminded of the scripture that says, for the love of money is the root of all evil. And I know we're on a podcast show where we're striving to give you the truth about black wealth, but we're not doing it for the love of money.
Absolutely.
Right? We're doing this for the love of God. And that's what we want to try to show you in this show and talk about in this show is that while we do need finances and we do need money and we utilize money in this world, we don't come here on this show to do this for the love of money because we know that the love of money is the root of all evil. But the root of why we do what we do is out of the love of God and striving to be obedient to God.
Yes, sir.
And in being obedient, it's important to know that whatever it is that you are doing, whether intentional or unintentional, you are leaving a legacy.
Absolutely.
Whether you are with your children or on the job that you are on or wherever you are in your life, you are leaving a legacy. You are leaving an impact where you are. All right. Whether that's a positive impact or a negative impact, it is impact. It is your story. It is the legacy that you are leaving and on society right now. It's how you're going to be remembered. So we want to talk today, Will, like telling people, how do you want to be remembered? How do you want to transmit your legacy on to somebody else?
Man, I think about that almost on a daily basis. Like I said, money is not the root of all evil. It's the love of the money. So there's nothing wrong with money. So we want people to understand that we all need money to utilize and to give ourselves freedoms and options and opportunities, because that's what we want to have. We want to have the opportunity to do what we want to do, when we want to do, and how we want to do it. So money is a tool and a resource, but not to let money control your decision making and dictate things. So for me, it's always been about service. And like you say, this is media call for you chosen. I feel like I've been chosen to, come into the career field of being a financial advisor. And that was kind of God's plan for my life because it wasn't my plan. So for me, it's always been about service first, because if you take care of people, I mean, people take care of you.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, sometimes we get caught up in, putting the cart before the horse, and, we all have our own agendas, and we can get caught up in, worldly activities from time to time. We've all been there. So, maintaining your relationship with Christ first and foremost, keeping you grounded, keeping you centered. And then it helps to center you in understanding what life is all about. Mm-hmm. So for me, my passion and mission in life has always been, I want to affect people I never come into contact with. I want to affect and change generations. My passion in life, God gave me in a vision, over a decade ago. He said, I want you to teach people how to create generational wealth. And, that's a mission and a passion that I've had, ever since I woke up one morning back in 2008. And I've been on that journey each and every day ever since. So regardless of who I'm talking to, how much money they have, how much money they don't have, regardless of their financial situation, I've always been about teaching that person or that individual, that group of people, how to create generational wealth. And obviously I do that, through wealth management as a financial advisor, but, there's so much more, biblical teaching and biblical principles that go along with that. And understanding, of course, a righteous man leaves a heritage to his children. That's the foundation. That's when I got into this business, I'm a pastor of my church at home. That was the first statement he ever made to me. And it's, one of those statements that I didn't understand how meaningful or impactful it would be in my career at the time. But it's one of those statements that he said to me and he's always stuck with me. And as I got into my career and the vision and passion was given to me by God, now it all just kind of made sense, and that service is what always comes back to mind, and, understanding and watching my father be a coach and, a teacher and give of himself on a day in, day out basis. And I've taken the same approach. Mm-hmm. I give the people on a day in, day out approach is what we do here, on this platform. We're giving knowledge and information to people, every opportunity we get to hopefully pour into them to be a better version of themselves. So for me, it's always been about, legacy and touching people that I'd never come into contact with, either that by way of me working with them as an advisor or just by the words that come out of my mouth, hopefully being an inspiration, hopefully lighting a fire, hopefully challenging them, to want to be better and do better. So for me, legacy has always been bigger than money. Yeah. For me, money has always been a byproduct of the work. Okay. The more I give unto God, the more he's going to give unto me. So I understand that principle. So I've always been big on giving. You can't outgive God, but I'm gonna sure try. So yeah, that's the mentality I've always taken. And so for me, that's what I want my legacy to be. And I feel like that's how you create a legacy that will last forever. So for me, one of my biggest fears is to be forgotten. So if you want to stand the test of time, you want to be immortal, so to speak, you got to give of yourself. You got to be selfless. You got to pour into people. And that's how you truly create a legacy that will stand the test of time with or without money. Now, obviously, I want to pass on a legacy of financial wealth to my family and to my loved ones and to my kids, and want to pass on to other charitable organizations and do a lot financially for people. But if I feel like I can pour, the passion and knowledge and service into more people, I think the byproduct of that is we're all going to help each other that much more. So we'll all be in a better situation financially anyway, right, by creating those habits and being about the legacy of affecting people in a positive way.
Okay. So leaving that so we can have a financial legacy.
Absolutely.
We can have a faith and spiritual legacy that we pass on. Like we said earlier, whatever it is that you're doing, you're passing on the legacy. And so let's, defining legacy, Webster's Dictionary says that legacy is something transmitted by or received from an ancestor or predecessor or from the past. Mm-hmm. All right. So that's the basic definition of legacy. Now, let's go into some financial terms when it talks about passing on a legacy. First thing I want us to touch on is this thing called a durable power of attorney. I think that would be beneficial that if you could, from wealth advisement and wealth management standpoint, explain to us the importance of having a durable power of attorney and what that is.
I mean, it's extremely important. And it's always those things that we don't plan to happen that devastate us the most. None of us plan to be in a position where we can't speak for ourselves. None of us plan for a situation where we're incapacitated in the hospital, or we're in a state, or we're in a coma, whatever it may be, and we're unable to make those decisions on what to do, when to do, and how to do. So having that power of attorney gives someone the authority to be able to act on your behalf when you're not able to act on your own accord. Because regardless of your situation, we've touched on it in different points in time, but having that, that option there. So you're not leaving your loved ones with a burden. You're not creating more questions than what they already have. Because if you're in a predicament in a state where, from a physical standpoint, you're incapacitated. So think about the emotional state that your family and loved ones are going to be in at that particular point in time. Now, you couple that with having to make financial decisions and decide who's going to do what, when, how. The process of going through and getting authorization to do that is going to be some hurdles and hoops that they'll have to jump through. Now, if I'm already dealing with emotional turmoil, placing financial stress and turmoil on top of that, it's only going to make matters worse. And that's where you create the vacancy, and you create a void where indecisiveness can creep in, where bickering and infighting can creep in. Where if I've already laid a foundation previously, and I've already laid out the plan of action that I want to take place if something were to happen to me, now the people who are there strictly to care for me can just worry about caring for me. And the person who's in charge of paying my bills, making sure that, things keep running, the lights stay on, the mortgage gets paid, the car insurance stays up to date, all those little things that, we don't think about, we kind of take for granted. All the things that each and every one of us do, because we all do a lot. Right. You think about all the bills you pay that your wife don't know you pay. And it's not because she doesn't care that you pay them. Right. It's just because she has her roles and responsibilities and you have yours, and you kind of operate on those accords. So you think about, well, I'm paying the phone bill. She's paying the insurance. I'm paying the light. She's paying the water. I'm paying the cable. She's paying the internet. All these things that go on that if something were to happen, does your spouse or significant other have the ability to call the power company on behalf of y'all? If she's not on that account or he's not on that account, guess what? They don't have authorization to do anything. And we can't make any decisions. So it puts us all in a bind, and it makes matters worse. And it puts us in a position where we have to focus on things outside of just getting better and dealing with whatever emotional turmoil and trauma we may be dealing with just from the state that person is in.
That's good. That's good. That's good. So taking care of our family, this is passing on a legacy. This is making sure that we display our love to, because like you said, we don't know what's going to happen. But I'm reminded of you when you say that 1 Timothy 5:8 says, those that won't care for their relatives, and especially those in their own household, have denied the true faith and are worse than unbelievers. So our first goal is to make sure that we take care of home, to make sure that we take care of our relatives, make sure we take care of our family. And that's how we pass on a legacy, is preparing for the unexpected. And as you just stated about, having those bills, that goes back to what we've been on all this year, is about having plans. Right. Making a plan. Yes, and it's important to sit down and talk to that spouses talk to one another, and those in the same household talk to one another. And even if you don't have a spouse, that you speak to your children, right? That your children understand, your children or your spouse, they understand everything that you do in the household, right? That they understand all the bills that you pay, and they have an understanding of that first and foremost. And then when you do the durable power of attorney, that now you've laid those things out. You've at least had the conversation, but we want you to go past the conversation at this point. Well, first, have the conversation. Number one, right? You got to talk about it.
Yes, got to talk.
Got to talk about it. Then after you talk about it, write it out. All right. Write out those things that you pay and what you take care of. It's as simple as having a budget. But yet having a budget is not as simple, right? Because it takes work and putting that work in. Sometimes it takes, well, all the time it takes time to get those things done. So have a conversation, write the budget out, make it plain, put it all together, and then after you do so, now put the power of attorney in place. That now the power of attorney is in place, that if anything does happen to you, the person that you've given power of attorney, they have everything, they know everything first because they've heard you talk about it. Then they have a list of everything down. And then now if anything happens to you, they can go and act on your behalf.
Well, absolutely. Well, you think about it, how many times have we seen in our own families, someone need or have to go into a long-term care facility? And, you have people in the family that's saying, well, so-and-so, she want this to happen, or she want that to happen. And well, she want me to be in charge, or she said her daughter's going to be in charge, but I'm a sister, I should be in charge. I know what she want better than you. And now you have bickering and infighting because there's two types of deaths. There's a physical death, which we all know in the natural, of course, you're leaving this earth and hopefully you're going home to the Lord. And you have what's called a living death, where you're still here, you still have breath in your body, but you can't function on your own. But because you're still here, you still are a bill. And we all are a bill. But as long as we're breathing, we're still accumulating more bills. Once you pass away, you're not accumulating any more bills. That's finality in those bills. But when I'm here, I still have my personal bills, even though I'm not utilizing that cell phone. I still have to pay Verizon. I still have to pay AT&T or T-Mobile, whoever it is, because even though I'm not utilizing that service at this particular point. So having that power of attorney is key and important to make sure that we can plan for the physical death, but also for that living death that happens far more often than we realize, because then most people usually go into some type of facility. And it's at that point that most of us start thinking about, do we have our plans in place? Don't let tomorrow sneak up on you. Take care of what you can today.
That's good. That's good. That's good. And this is what displays what we love by what type of legacy we're going to leave. Absolutely. With them, right? And the legacy that we leave displays how much we love the persons or things that we do. So that's durable power of attorney. And let's speak to the business on that kind of deals with, more on the personal side.
Absolutely.
Which is good. But we also have some people that tune into us that may have some type of business, whether small business, large business. They have LLCs that have been laid out, and like myself, like yourself, we are self-employed, so to speak, and what we do depends on us. So what type of insurance do we need as being the main person, breadwinner, that on our job?
It's extremely key that, as a business owner, it's even more important for you to have a plan. And the reason why is, when we talked about on the individual side, we all have our individual plans and budgets, or for myself, if you're single, or if, for me and my wife, from a household standpoint, we have to have a plan to be on the same accord. But when you're a business owner, now you're responsible usually more people than what's inside your house a lot of times. And especially if you have employees, you have, people that are contracting you for work. So there's a lot more involved in the process. So the responsibility that you have as a business owner is even greater. I'm not going to say it's your greatest responsibility, because I always believe your family is your greatest responsibility, but your business is what takes care of your family. So this is one of the greatest responsibilities that you have to sit down and create a plan for. Even, I'm not going to say more so, but just as important as having an individual plan, because from a business owner standpoint, you're responsible for your employees, you're responsible for your customers. So your customers don't care if you were in a car accident and you're not available to complete the work that they paid for. All they care about is getting the work that they paid for completed. So having the right plans in place. Do you have a durable power of attorney in place for a business? Do you have the right type of key man and right type of buy, sell, or cross purchase? Do you know what those things are? So first and foremost, we have to have the conversation for ourselves individually, but also we have to have a conversation with someone like myself as a financial advisor, or some type of, planner from a business standpoint, to make sure that we understand what we need to have in place before going into business. We got far too many people going into business without having operating agreements and bylaws and having order of operations and having a succession plan and because that will tell you what type of coverage you need to put in place. And we're going to get more into that right back in a minute.
Welcome back to Closing the Gap Podcast, Truth About Black Wealth. I am your co-host, Mr. Eddie Richardson, here with our host and owner of Hamilton Wealth Advisors, Mr. Wilbert Hamilton. And you are tuned in to WATV 94.9 on your FM dial, also on YouTube at Closing the Gap, the podcast, The Truth. And you can find us as well on anywhere that you stream your podcast. Wilbert, let's continue on the conversation. You were talking about the type of insurance that you need as a business owner, and there's one thing that you said was key man insurance. Could you continue that explanation and conversation along those lines?
Well, key man is probably the type of coverage I would say comes first and foremost for most business owners, because as a business owner, I understand that, especially when we get started, we wear many hats. Mm-hmm. We're CFO, we're probably the lead, production manufacturer, or the lead advisor, or the lead, beautician, or the lead barber in that particular, business. We have a responsibility to make sure that we operate and manage customer service, so we got to make sure the work is quality, make sure it's delivered with a quality, smile, and make sure it's delivered for a quality price. Mm-hmm. So we have a lot of things that we are in charge of that we have to take care of as the business owner. So I tell people why key man is the most important type of coverage a business needs to have in the beginning is because if something were to happen to you as the business owner, how would the business be able to continue to function when you wear multiple hats? Mm-hmm. How many people would you need to hire in order to make things continue to go? And that's where that key man policy comes in. And so for me, giving myself as an example, I'm a financial advisor by trade. But also I own a wealth management firm, and I have multiple advisors and multiple offices. So not only am I training advisors, I still have a pool of clients that I'm working with that I'm an actual advisor for. So because I'm wearing multiple hats, and then obviously I'm working in a position as a CFO from a management standpoint, making sure that I oversee the growth and expansion of the organization and the company as well. So I'm wearing multiple hats at the same time. So if something were to happen to me, God forbid, and now my clients need an advisor, so that means my company needs to hire an advisor to be able to take on and manage my clients, because those clients' money still needs to be managed in a professional way. Is they don't want to see their money all of a sudden go a different direction just because I'm not here. Mm-hmm. They want to continue to grow their money with or without me. So we got to make sure that we can maintain a certain level of quality and production, whether I'm here or not. But then also the company wants to continue to grow. Mm-hmm. We want to continue to add more advisors and add more officers and grow the business, because that's the vision of the business. Right. The vision is to grow and to multiply and build and become the organizational powerhouse throughout the world, that we live in. So, by that vision already being in place and that business plan already being done, well, now we want that continue to move forward. And also the advisors that are working with me currently, part of the reason why they join forces with my company is because of the training tutelage that I can give them based on my 20 plus years of experience in being an advisor working with multiple types of clients. So they're here and meeting with me on a weekly basis, getting coaching, getting training on how to overcome objections, how to grow themselves as a personal advisor and grow their personal practice so they can be more successful for themselves and their families. Mm-hmm. Now, if I'm not here, they still need coaching and training to continue to get better for themselves. Yeah. So just with using myself as an example, if something were to happen to me, that is easily 3 people that would need to be hired. Well, that's 3 incomes that need to be paid from my business. Well, that key man policy would provide the coverage necessary for the business to be able to go out and not hire the right individuals to plug into those positions so we could maintain the same profitability and have the same outlook and projection that we have with me or without me. Because at the end of the day, I need my business to maintain growth, because guess what? Just like we talked about in earlier episodes, we talked about the greatest loss of life when a person passes away is the loss of income. So if something happens to me, well, that's my family's income that's going to change as well. So in order for me to maintain my family's income that they're receiving from the work that I'm doing, the business needs to maintain itself as well. So I need to have a key man policy in place to maintain the production. So that income can still be produced, that can still be funneled to my family. My family can continue to move forward without me the best way possible. So at least I've alleviated the financial burden. Now, they're still going to be dealing with the emotional loss, of myself, but at least they are not worried about how we're going to stay in the home that we purchased. How is we going to be able to maintain the cars? How are the kids going to be able to maintain the dreams of maybe going to the schools and, graduate schools and things of the nature they wanted to go to? Because the plan is with me helping to pay for that. Well, if I'm not here to help pay for that, that makes that dream that much harder for them. So my goal, and of course, in life, obviously as a father, is to make my child's, life and my wife's life easier than it is to create an avenue for them. So for me, making sure that I have that key man insurance in place is vital, because if I just work for someone else, I need to make sure I just have insurance. I need insurance from myself, and I need the assurance of God that he gonna take care of me when I leave. But when you're a business owner, you not only need personal insurance, you not only need the assurance of God, but you need key man insurance to make sure the sustainability is there. So if I can leave my family an individual legacy financially, but then I can create the key man policy to maintain the business standard. My wife has now received the windfall to maintain and grow things, but also the income is in. So now this inheritance that I left, that can continue to be invested and that can go away. And she doesn't have to utilize this at that particular point in time because I've maintained the business.
All right. Got it. Understood. So that's good. Keeping everything aligned, keeping everything protected. And then that also displays what you love, right?
Mm-hmm.
I love my family so much that I'm going to make sure that everything is covered. But then also I'm in the business and this is the way that things are happening. So in order that my loved ones are still cared for, I leave this type of legacy where the legacy doesn't die when I die.
Absolutely.
And oftentimes, too many times, the legacy dies when the person dies, right? And the living legacy dies. We don't leave that legacy to live on, and that's what we want to do. The truth about Black wealth is that too many times Black wealth leaves when the person leaves.
Absolutely.
And we want Black wealth to be able to stand the test of time and to stand against the inevitable, because death is inevitable, right? We will, leave this earth at some point, but your business will still be here or can still be here if we write the plan and make it plain, put everything in place, have the conversations with our families, get the durable power of attorney, and then get key man insurance that everything can be taken care of.
Yeah.
Now, oftentimes, we see some people that have different businesses and, they have been married multiple times. They have children, from, in different places, I would say, some men have multiple children by multiple wives or different women, and some women have children with various husbands or different men, but they still have a legacy.
Absolutely.
That they have. They still have things that they own. And let's go from the business side, right? Let's go from the business side. What's some when we were talking earlier, before we started the show, we were talking about, how people in that situation are still able to pass their business down.
Absolutely.
Case in point, we were talking about George Foreman, and everybody knows, well, I won't say everybody, but most people know and have heard of the Foreman Grill. And if they didn't have one, they still have one, or they at least heard about it, right? It was all the rage in the early 2000s.
I had a few of them in college.
Yeah. They cook some good burgers and things on it, right?
Absolutely.
You know, and drop the grease on down in the tray, you know? And so, you know, that's a money legacy that he had. And we know he had a lot of children. All of them had some variation of the name George, right? And he had some by different wives along the way. So in that case, you know, when the businesses are left, can you talk to the people that are out here that are business owners about like buy-sell agreements and that thing? We talked about like cross-purchase buy-sell agreements.
Yeah, so I mean, it's one of those things where it's vitally important to have your estate plan drawn out. And for business owners, it just goes a step further. So of course, we all got to have our individual plans. So I pray and I hope that their family had, you know, their trust and estate put together to where everything was worked out, and he already know who were going to be the trustees and executors. He already knew how the beneficiaries are going to be drawn up, because that can become a real sticky situation. And that's what those things we want to avoid, if at all costs. You know, that's why, like I said, we want to write it down and make it plain if it's going to be real. It ain't a legacy if I ain't wrote it down. It's just a dream, essentially. So we want to make sure that we're putting pen to paper. We're creating actionable item steps to actually execute these things that we're talking about, because far too often in our community, you know, wealth is leaving, like you said earlier. So I tell people all the time when, you know, I have conversation, I do speaking engagements, there are no wealthy African Americans. A lot of people get mad with me. And I said, no, wealth transcends generations. Wealth has been passed on from one generation to the next. Well, we have some very, very rich African Americans that are possibly on the verge of becoming wealthy, and that wealth being passed down to the next generation. But it hasn't happened yet. You know, Robert Smith has some kids, but he's still here working. You know, Michael Jordan has some kids, but he's been married and divorced, and his wealth has been, you know, almost couldn't have one time. He's married the new wife and has new kids now, you know, and he still has other kids with his former wife. So who knows how that legacy is going to pan out once he leaves this earth. You know, Oprah doesn't have any kids that I'm aware of, you know, so her wealth is going to be spread throughout charities. How is that wealth being transcended to the next generation? So when we look at, you know, what we have as a community, we haven't had the wealthy in our community just now. And it's coming. You know, I think Jay-Z and Beyonce, they're on their verge, and we got a lot of, you know, LeBron, them, they're coming. They're putting themselves in position to be that.
Right.
But with the proper planning, it's the only way that's actually going to come to fruition. If we don't have the proper planning, it will never happen, because it'll disappear overnight. And when you have a business, it's that much more vital, because, you know, if you have an associate and a partner in business, and that partner has a spouse, well, if that partner passes away, well, now that spouse inherits their share of the business. Do you want to be in business with that spouse? Does that spouse want to be in business with you? Does that spouse even enjoy or like the business? Do they have the same care and concern about the business? Now, the chances are that even if you get along with them, you're not going to have the same thought process, because they haven't been in that foxhole with you building that business. They're going to have a different view and vantage point. So we understand that one of the hardest things to do in life is to find somebody to share your life with that's on the same page at the same time, moving in the same direction. And that's how you get your spouse. And having a business relationship is much like a marriage. You have to find someone that's on the same page as you, at the same time as you, going the same direction as you, and you have to hope that y'all stay on the same page. Now, it's great if you found that, but if that person now passes away, the likelihood of you inheriting a new partner who has that same vision is probably not going to be likely. So if their spouse inherits their share, well, what happens is if you have a buy-sell agreement in place, now that insurance protection can essentially buy that person out of the business. You can basically, you know, buy them out. Now you can take over sole ownership of the company. Now it's not leaving that person that you built the business with without.
Okay.
And this is why plans have to be reviewed. This is why we say every year we need to do a review. We need to do a recap, because if the business valuation has grown from being worth $1 day one to being worth $1 million in year 5, to being worth $10 million in year 10. And all of a sudden somebody passes away and you haven't revisited that plan, and that buy-sell agreement says that your payout is $100,000. Well, whose fault is that? Well, I'm sorry, but it's your fault because you didn't review and revamp the plan. It's much like your homeowner's insurance. It's your responsibility to look at the coverage and see if it's up to date based on the values of where homes are now. If something happened to your home and you had to rebuild, it's your responsibility to make sure that the insurance company and that policy is up to par for you to be able to rebuild that home the same way that you had it prior to. So we have to be, personally accountable to making sure that we have those things in place, because, you don't want to be in a situation where now you've inherited a business partner that you don't have a relationship with, because that's essentially what's going to happen. If that spouse now all of a sudden is taking over for, their late spouse, and now all of a sudden you got to go through and have the financial meeting with them, and you got to have the marketing meeting with them, and you got to have a new succession plan meeting with them. Those are things that you're probably not going to agree on right out of the bat, simply because that person is probably coming from a place of ignorance to a certain extent. They haven't been involved in those conversations. So it's naturally going to make them more than likely question a lot of things that are going on because it's unfamiliar. So anytime something is unfamiliar, it doesn't mean I don't like you. But if I'm unfamiliar with a situation, a circumstance, I'm going to have more questions than answers. I'm not going to just go along to get along. I'm going to be somewhat hesitant. So in order to maybe eliminate some of that, having a key man or cross purchase or buy sell agreements in place allows us to make sure that in the event of some of those things happening, we can buy that person out so that family can be taken care of. That spouse can get their just due, but now the company can continue to function the way we planned on it. And now I have the money from the policies that we had in place based on the key man and also the buy sell agreement. While you've been bought out, I'm now able to go and hire and retain the kind of help I need to continue to forward push that we wanted to have from a business standpoint.
Wow. Yeah, that's a lot to grab hold of right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot to grab hold of. And that's why I want to encourage everyone that, you want to go further in depth on various subjects like this. Come and see Mr. Hamilton at Hamilton Wealth Advisors. You can visit him at his website at hamiltonwealthadv.com. Set up a consultation, and we can make sure that, whatever it is that whatever point you are in your life and in business, and whatever legacy that you want to leave to the ones that you love and for the things that you love as well, then you need to sit down with a wealth advisor like Mr. Hamilton to lay out your plan to do so. And as I just stated, whether it's the people you love, the legacy that you leave, or the things that you love and you want to leave a legacy, you need to have a conversation. And along those lines, Mr. Hamilton, when you talk about the things that you love, that takes us into charitable giving, charitable planning options. I think it's important, because all of us have various things that we love and we care about, and we have certain things that we want to see stand the test of time as well. That yes, we want our family to be well, but then also there are some institutions in society that we want them to continue to survive. We want them to continue to go in the flow forward, that they can have the impact that they had on us. We want them to continue to have that same impact or even more on society after we leave. And so I think it's important that we get an understanding that within our legacy, the things that we love, we need to make a plan for those things too, right? Because charitable giving and charitable planning options are also things that come into the financial world as well. When we talk about charitable planning options, what we're saying is that if you have a certain cause that is important to you, or let's say a college, school, when I employ everybody that when you go, if you went to college, look at the buildings that were named at that college, and I guarantee you that Those persons that are named on those buildings are the ones that left a charitable gift to those institutions. And so before we want to introduce that, and then once we come back after the commercial break, we're going to dive into charitable giving to display leaving your legacy and showing that you continue to love the things that you cared for while you were living. See you back shortly. Welcome back to Closing the Gap Podcast, Truth About Black Wealth. I am your co-host, Mr. Eddie Richardson, here with our host and owner of Hamilton Wealth Advisors, Mr. Wilbert Hamilton. And right before a commercial break, we are talking about charitable planning options, charitable giving, and aligning yourself with the things that you care about. And I think that's important, man. We talked about the power of attorney, talked about key man insurance, talked about cross purchase in business and buy sell agreements. I think it's equally important that as we leave a legacy that we have an understanding of we can still make an impact on our families, but then also extend past that family.
Absolutely.
People that when you go by your colleges and institutions and those in different places where they're named after people, most times those buildings are named after people that left an endowment, which it was some money that was left over to be able to make sure that the work in that place continues to go on. So, Wilbert, if you could you talk to us about charitable giving and what it takes to really work an endowment when it talks about leaving a legacy?
I mean, it's ironic that everything starts with a conversation. Mm-hmm. Everything starts with a dream, but it all comes back to the plan. Mm-hmm. And as we've talked about, our theme for this year has been planning, writing it down and making it plain and rinsing and repeat and sticking to the plan and continue to evaluate the plan, assess the plan and work the plan, it's funny in life and, the seat I sit in as an advisor, I talk to people, on a daily basis about their financial livelihood, about, what they want their legacies to be and, what kind of, financial blessing they want to give to the next generation. And, ironically, I find that everybody plans for what they hope to happen, mm-hmm. but not enough people plan for what's guaranteed to happen. Mm-hmm. See, it's one thing guaranteed to us in life, mm-hmm. is that we're going to leave this earth. Mm-hmm. Don't know when, don't know where, don't know how. But we all seem to find the time to plan for everything else except for what we know is going to happen. Mm-hmm. So we plan, where we're going to go to vacation. We plan on where we want our kids to go to school. We plan, what we want to achieve in our career fields. And, mm-hmm. We plan for the kind of house we want to buy and the kind of car we're going to get. And we plan for everything except for the one thing that is guaranteed to happen. Now, the ironic thing is you can place a time frame on everything else you want to achieve in life. Mm-hmm. But the one thing you can't place a time frame on is when you're going to leave this earth. Mm-hmm. We don't know the day. We don't know the hour. Wow. That's up to God. Mm-hmm. So wouldn't it make sense that if I didn't know the one thing that's guaranteed to me, that would be the first thing that I plan for? Mm-hmm. Because that day could be tomorrow. It could be next year. It could be 10 years from now. It could be 50 years from now. We don't know. Like I tell the Lord every day, I want 90 plus, happy and healthy. Mm-hmm. That is my call and my cry to the Lord each and every day. I got to fight to be more righteous and holy so I can get that 90 plus, happy and healthy. So that's always my prayer. And I make it known to him on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. But who said that that's God's plan for me? We never know what God's plan is in life, and we got to do the best we can while we can. So when we talked about in this episode and we talked about the labor of love and what is your legacy and, what you give is important, because if you don't give nothing, you ain't going to be remembered for doing nothing. Mm-hmm. And if you want to be remembered, you're going to have to give. Mm-hmm. And being a charitable, cheerful giver, mm-hmm. is what's going to have you more remembered than anything else.
Right.
We've all driven by a university or been on the college campus and seen the name on the top of the building and said, man, who is that? What did they do? Me being from Montgomery, Alabama, being and seeing the Abernathy building down on Alabama State campus. I mean, who is that? Yeah. Oh man, that's one of the good brothers of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. You know what? I heard some great things about him. I happen to be a member of that illustrious organization. He left a legacy. There's legacies that are being left. I want to write my name on the wall as well. So in order for me to do that, I'm going to have to think bigger than myself. And charitable organizations, I don't want to limit them because those are our churches. Our churches are the first charitable organizations. I don't care what you say. That is the first place that took care of us, that fed us, that clothed us, that sheltered us. Before we had nonprofits, the church was the only nonprofit. And it's not ironic that once we stopped giving to that nonprofit, all the other nonprofits popped up. But they don't do as much as that nonprofit did. And we always have a question or concern of, well, why should I do this or why should I do that? Well, guess what? When you give, don't think about who you're giving to. Think about what you're giving for. See, it's my job and my responsibility to give because God blessed me with having. Not to worry about what the organization that's receiving is doing when they get it. If you have a question about what the organization is doing, you just need to change the organization that you give it to. So that's my rant for today on charitable giving, because I see far too many occasions that we've started to withhold and not give based on what we think a charity should be doing. Well, if you don't like what a charity is doing, get involved with the charity. Find a new charity. Find a new church. But we need to give because we've all been blessed. And of course, God loves a cheerful giver. And when you give, it's going to be given back unto you tenfold. So we have to get out of this mindset of doing just enough and saying that, well, you know what? Nobody gave to me, so I'm not going to give to anyone. Because the generations before us could have said the same thing, but they didn't. My grandparents and great grandparents weren't giving a lot, weren't giving much of anything, but they gave everything they had and then some. And look what it turned into for the next generation and the next generation. Now we throw away more food than our great grandparents had to eat. We're far more blessed than what we realize in a lot of situations. So we have to be more centered. We have to be more willing to be giving. And we have to think about what charities, what organizations do I want to leave a legacy to? Now we have to start it with the home, because everything starts in the home. I'm a giving person because my parents were giving people. I watched my mother give her time to the church. She still gives her time to the church. I watched my father give his time to kids and the youth day after day for the entirety of his, teaching and work career. He was giving. So it naturally made me more giving because I saw the benefit and the value of touching people and being able to impact people, even if you can't impact them financially. And when we talk about charitable plan and charitable giving, it's not limited to money because time is our most valuable resource. And just being willing to give of your time and share knowledge and wisdom is why we do this podcast the way we do it in this radio show every week. We're coming to you. We're giving what God has given to us, hoping that it will impact you in a positive way. And even if it don't impact you today, you will tell it to somebody else tomorrow and it'll impact them. So the goal is always to impact in a charitable way. It's not worrying about what we're going to receive from the giving that we do. I think when you start trying to count the gift based on what you give, you're not giving with a sincere heart, and that's not going to be blessed. So we have to start writing down and making it plain and having a plan of action to, first and foremost, take care of our house.
Right.
Making sure that your first charity is at home. I'm not telling you to leave charity to an organization that you ain't took care of your home first. So make sure that you've left your wife and your kids and your family in a situation where if something happens to you, they have the means in order to sustain themselves. But also being able to be a blessing to somebody else, because I can guarantee you, if you've been blessed enough to create a financial plan for your family, somebody helped you along the way get there.
That is correct.
It may have been a teacher. It may have been a mentor. It was somebody that poured into you, that helped you build and grow and cultivate who you are individually. And you're going to share some type of common charity in place. It may have been from the church. It may have been from fraternity or sorority. It may have been from your, from your college or institution, preferably an HBCU, in my personal opinion. Even if you went to a PWI, there's nothing wrong with it. I graduated from one, but I'm giving all my money to HBCUs. I'm just giving you straight. We go give it like it. We got to cut it. Straight, no taste. We got to give it to you.
Yes, sir.
We need our money to go back into our community. So if you've been blessed by people from any of those organizations to get where you are financially, it's imminent that you give back into the community the exact same way. And if you've been blessed with more, you will be in the position to give more. Never count how much you give based on what somebody else gave you. My father told me this a long time ago when I started working. He said, look here, as long as you're making more, you're going to be giving more. So never judge somebody else's gift based off what you gave. And I understood that the more and more I got, especially once you start having kids in a family and you look at the gift that they give daddy versus the gift that daddy give them, it ain't always the same.
Yeah.
But you know what? It's proportionate to what they can give. That's why they say the it's not in the value of the gift, it's in the intent that was behind the gift that was given. So always judge the intent, not necessarily what the gift actually is, because if someone has $1 and they give you 50 cents versus somebody having $1 million and they give you $1, you'll say, well, this person gave me more money. He gave me $1. He gave me 50 cents. But what was the intent behind
What they gave.
what they gave?
Yeah.
This person gave all they can give and then some. This person gave you something just to leave, just to kind of get you away.
Yeah.
So-
One gave out of their abundance,
Yes.
and one gave out of all that they had.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Out of that need. And that's also scriptural as well, where Jesus even talked about, you know what I'm saying, the rich man that came and gave because he had a lot. And then the woman that only had a little but just gave out of the freedom of her heart. So, sometimes you get both, right? And however it is, but the judgment of each one is that they gave, but what was the intent?
Yeah.
And as you said, going to the church, sometimes we may have to lock the doors of the church to make sure we can see that everybody gives. But if everybody goes ahead and gives,
Then you ain't
we
gotta close the door.
don't have to close the door and lock the door in order to get the deals, right? And I pun in that with that story, and I'm sure those that are on social media understand where I'm coming from with that. But giving is important. And we are here, as you stated, because somebody gave to us, and most times it was the church. That church has been the foundational place of peace and of giving, and it is what has established us as a people within society. It is what has given us our education. It is what has established the HBCUs. And speaking along those lines, even, now some people try to discredit some of the HBCUs because they are named, many of them are named, quite a few of them are named after people that are not African American. But what they don't realize is even the European person or whoever it is named after was the one that had the finances.
Yes.
They were the ones that left that legacy. And that since they had the money and they had the means to be able to get the funds, whereas we were being oppressed, we were being placed enslaved, we were suffering under Jim Crow laws, and our wealth was being taken from us. These persons that didn't have that issue were the ones that were establishing the thing.
Yes.
Right. And so there's nothing wrong with that, because it's about the purpose behind it. It's not about whose name is on it. It's about the purpose that's behind it. And if that person that's name is on it had the purpose to be able to care for the people, then so be it. We take it all the more, right? Because of where their heart was. Because they had a heart, I would say, after God, because they saw the injustice that was taking place. And as a result, they said that they were going to fight against that. And so that's the legacy that they have left. And that's why today we're talking about legacy and love, because what you love, you are going to leave your legacy there. Your legacy is going to display the types of things that you love and what you care for, right? And then when we come to money, talking about that, a lot of times wherever you make your budget, wherever you are spending the majority of your money, displays what you love and what you care about the most. Wherever you're making the majority of your investment, wherever you are investing the majority of your time, displays what you love the most. And so we want you to take the time and evaluate those things and write out a plan that really shows who you are, right? Because sometimes we get involved and do some things because we have failed to plan.
Yeah.
And as a result, where our true heart is and what we really care for, we're not really displaying those things because we have not taken that time to lay out that plan. And so we want you to lay out a charity plan for your life as well. Align yourself charitably to where your spiritual values are, right? Scripture says God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, right? That God loved us so much that he gave the only son that he had. He gave. It shows that what he cared about. It shows where his love was. It shows where his charity was, that he gave us that. He left that legacy for us in Christ. And that is what we should do daily. Let that be a guide for us that, okay, what am I willing to give up for the sake of the next generation? Do I love my family that much? Do I love a particular cause that much that I am willing to give out of the abundance or just out of necessity to that thing, right? And so we want everybody to focus there and know that that's where you find favor with God.
Yes.
Is in where you align yourself and leaving your legacy and what you love. And if you love God, then you are going to love God's people and you are going to care for God's people in that way. I like what you said about the church once again, because the church was the safe haven that we had, the institution that we had and still have, right? I want to, let me go there. I want everybody to realize that the church is still the institution that it always was. Don't be confused by some of the churches and ministers and things that you see on television and the shorts that you see of somebody saying one thing and showing that on television, and then you make a particular judgment just based off that one thing that you saw that was a pastor or that was in a particular church, and you don't have the full context of what was going on in that particular place. Me and one of my good friends were talking last week, and he pastors, remember, he pastors down in Montgomery now, and we grew up together, friends since elementary school, since kindergarten. And we were talking about the fact that when you are in your church and you are speaking to the people, that, and when you end up going on Facebook and on television and these things, that sometimes the things that you are talking about, you are talking to the people that are there, right there in that place. And there's a particular thing that is happening there. And what you are saying to them is needed for them. And then, but when the masses end up seeing it, they place themselves there without being there. And they don't understand the context of what is going on there. And I think that is also what happened with, even though I punned it earlier, with Marvin Sapp, right? and where he was and when he tried to get the money from the people and asking everybody to give $20. I can't say he was right or wrong. I was not there. I don't know what the main goal or intent was, but I do know that growing up, I have been in church where the deacons have counted the money and they said, hey, our goal was such and such. So we're going to ask everybody to dig a little deeper in their pocket. We're going to ask such and such to give this, such and such to give that. And all Mama Sap was for $20 from everybody and asked the preachers for $100. So giving is important and the legacy that you leave is important. And what we want you to know is get the right context for everything that you need. Have a conversation with the wealth advisor. Pray and ask God to lead and guide you. Getting you a good church that you can leave not only a financial legacy for the generations to come, but also have a firm foundation of a spiritual legacy that you pass on. And we'll see you next time.
Yes, sir.